just a quick agenda. This is what I thought we could do for this first chapter. I don't think it's a biggest deal if you haven't read it. I think we can still add to the conversation. So I thought we would start, because I don't know everyone. So the introductions, meeting norms. We're going to do the final word protocol with some quotes. We're going to reflect on what we learned, and then we're going to set the expectations for next time. So click next.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have to really pay attention. Oh, no.
Okay, so I figured we could do a couple of your name, the school that you're working at. What would you do if you weren't a teacher? And why are you attending this book study? So I'll start because I'm leading. My name is Jennifer Flores. I work at Milford Central School as an RTI interventionist for ELA and math for elementary school. If I wasn't a teacher, I would probably be a financial planner. I love all things money. I love reading books and teaching people about money. So that's probably what I'd be. Cafeteria. I am attending this book study because I used to be a professional developer, college professor, all those good things in my past. And this book really resonates. And I think all teachers should learn this framework. Once this framework is learned, I think it's, no matter what, everything fits in here, which is nice. Anyone else want to go next?
I can go next. So my name is Andi Albin. I teach at the ONC BOCES in Milford. I actually came through to my position from industry. So I'm a CTE teacher. So I'm a professionally trained illustrator. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Illustration. So that's what I would be doing if I wasn't a teacher. I do consulting and some illustration and design on the side. So I do kind of do that, but I'd love to own my own business one day. That'd be cool. Why am I attending this book study? So this was something that was forwarded to me by my union. We get a flyer from CRTC, so it was cool to see that come through. And when I read the description, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like that's just what I need. I think I do have a fair amount of structure in my classroom, but because I come through industry and not from an educational background, I always feel like there are little gaps in things that I need to learn. So while I might have a knack for it, there's certain techniques that I think I can always improve upon. And I was very interested in learning about this. So I'm really excited to be part of this book study.
Awesome. And what's kind of what I love about the gradual release, and you'll learn, is the gradual release is everywhere, right? From learning to ride a bike, when someone's kind of holding you and then letting you go. So it's very relevant also to the CET world. You and I need to talk because I've written a children's book and I need an illustrator. So on a side note, I need to touch base with you about some things.
Perfect.
And Christy.
Hi guys, Christy Pratt. I teach at Horseheads High School. So like Aaron said, I'm out of your area, your network. I do teach science, grades 9 through 12. What would I do if I wasn't a teacher? I'd probably be a professional traveler or something really cool like that. No, I also like forensic science too. So that's always piqued my interest. And I'm attending this book study because I always love to support Aaron and all of the offerings that he has. And it sounded like something right up my alley, just to learn, grow, adapt, and just add to my repertoire. So
Yeah,
nice to meet everybody.
Let me introduce myself too, because I don't think I know everybody, especially Andy. So I am Aaron Sorensen. I'm the director here at the Catskill Regional Teacher Center. And I do what I love, so this is kind of cool for me. But I probably would do something in the area of business myself. But Andy, that's so cool. I am so glad that you're here. We are always wanting to reach out to CTE teachers. I think that's really an underrepresented group. We are looking to pick up your culinary arts teacher as a possibility for our board. But if not, I wonder if you might be interested in that kind of a thing.
Sure.
Yeah, because we really want to kind of connect with those CTEs. And so I'm so glad you're here. And I'm attending the book study because Jennifer asked me to buy the books. So if I'm going to buy the books, I might as well read them.
Awesome. So it sounds like we have a nice diverse group here. Do you want to go to the next slide, Erin? So these are just some quick meeting norms. I thought that it's always good, especially when we're all passionate and this is a great book, that we would do some meeting norms, clearly respectful discussions. All opinions and experiences are welcomed. Ask questions and then end and start on time. I know we're all busy professionals, so I want to make sure that we're starting and ending on time. Did anyone think I should include anything else in the meeting norms?
I just wanted to mention that we do record these sessions, but we will not make it public. So feel free to, speak your mind or whatever and not worry about it going somewhere. They will be recorded and I will put them on YouTube, but I'll put them on link required. So that way, if you're not here or something, we can share that out with somebody, but it's not going to the public.
That's very good to know. Okay, awesome. Erin, do you want to? So we're going to do a final word protocol. So my hope was that you'd be able to read chapter 1 and pick out a quote or two that kind of resonated with you in that first chapter. And then we're going to go through this final word protocol. Did everyone get a chance to read that first chapter?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So why don't we each take a second. If you want to go, Erin, to the next slide. So this is the way, I don't know, has anyone ever done this protocol? This is a really great protocol, especially if you have somebody in your group, like myself. I was one of those students or people that wanted to, like, sometimes I take over conversations, especially when I'm passionate about a topic. So this is a great way to have everyone get some type of input into the topic. So the first rule is to assign a facilitator and a timekeeper. If anyone wants to, maybe on their phone or something, be a timekeeper. Is anyone interested in being a timekeeper?
I can do it. Okay,
beautiful. And then I guess I'll be the facilitator. It makes sense because I'm running it. So I'll be the facilitator. So I'm just going to take you through the steps. So first, we're going to decide who goes first. That person's going to read their quote. All they're going to do is read it. Then they're going to tell us where to find it in the book so we can take a second to read the quote and kind of digest it. Then that person gets 3 minutes to talk about what resonated with them, with the quote. So what is it about this quote why did I pick it? They have 3 minutes to talk. After that, each person in the group gets 1 minute to respond to that. They can respond to what the original person said. They can respond to anything that someone else said. We're going to do that until everyone has a chance. And then the final word goes to the person who started. So they get to wrap it up and they get to respond to anything and everything that was said from everybody else. So they're going to wrap it up. Okay. Any questions about that?
Nope.
Why doesn't everyone take a second to decide what quote they're going to use, and then we'll get started. Anybody want to start? Be the one that start to read their quote.
I can start.
Okay. I have oops. Okay, so do you want to read your quote to us and then we'll find it?
Absolutely. So the quote that I picked is actually on page 2. It's at the bottom of the case for instructional frameworks section. So the paragraph starts with
Hear you.
essentially. So I'll just read that paragraph. It says, essentially, an instructional framework is a way to organize strategies and deploy them to create cohesive learning experiences for students. It's a defense against all too common and frankly exhausting, quote, buffet model, unquote, of professional learning, where teachers are prompted to keep adding to their plates without any idea of where they're going.
Can everyone else hear Andy? Because I can't.
Oh
I can't
no.
hear anybody actually.
I can hear her just fine. I'm sorry. Yeah. Huh.
Weird.
Andy, talk again. See if she can hear you.
Can you hear me now, Jen?
I can't hear anybody. I'm gonna log out and come back in real quick.
Okay. Well, I heard you just wonderfully, and I thought you had a great comment there and a great quote there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, like we always seem to be expecting teachers just to add more stuff in and add. That's the whole premise of teacher centers, really, is that learning should be continuous and ongoing, and that you should have time to digest your learning and then come back and then discuss it again.
I like that.
Let's see. Does Jennifer hear us now?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm sorry, Andy, can you tell me where your quote is again? What page number?
Sure. So it's actually just on page 2.
Okay.
And it's at the bottom of the case for instructional frameworks section.
Okay.
And so it's the paragraph that starts with essentially, an instructional framework is a way to organize strategies and deploy them to create cohesive learning experiences for students. It's a defense against the all too common and frankly exhausting buffet model of professional learning, where teachers are prompted to keep adding to their plates without any idea of where they're going to put it all.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful. All right. So I know you're the timer keeper. I'll be your timekeeper for this, for your 3
Okay.
minutes. So if you want to start right now, go ahead.
Okay. So the big reason that I chose this quote is because I think all teachers can relate to this when they might not necessarily look forward to conference days or PD days, because they dread that feeling of, oh great, now they're just going to introduce us to the next new thing that we have to add to our curriculum or the pedagogy, and how can we balance this with everything else that we're balancing. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and so that's one of the reasons that I chose to participate in this. I love actually doing PD outside of my normal, just like school prescripted, PD. So we have to remind ourselves that we are also students in those times. And so if that's how we feel, we need to put ourselves in our students' shoes and be prepared to teach them in a way that they feel engaged, just like we want to feel engaged. Oh, you're muted, Jen. There you go.
Yep, I got it. All right, perfect. So if you want to time me for a minute, I guess I can be, or does someone else want to go next?
So Erin kind of already responded, which was really nice.
Oh, sorry. So Erin, you have 1 minute to respond to the quote. I didn't hear it. Sorry.
Oh, so I think I was saying that I really liked that the quote that she selected, because it does seem like it's always adding more and more to what is expected of teachers, and not really any time to digest what you've learned and figure out how to actually implement it. And then I was sharing with Andy that really is the whole premise of teacher centers, where we're not with it. We don't like the idea of you go to some expensive conference, you get all jazzed up, and then you get back into the routine of your day and you never have a chance to actually put into place what you've learned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Christy said she's going to. Oh, sorry, not talking, but I will participate in the chat. Okay, no problem. So I guess I'll get my minute then. I think you made a really good, important point. And as a previous, I used to do professional development actually at BOCES for 4 years. And I remember going to professional development, and on the screen it said only 10% of what you learn today you're going to do something with. Only 10% of the people here will do something with what they learn. And I thought that was pretty powerful. So that meant that when you go to pre-PD, only about 10% of us will actually do something to actually implement in our own classrooms. So I think that is powerful that how do we, and not we, I guess I'm not a professional developer anymore, but how do professional developers or school districts make sure that they are creating differentiated professional development like they're expecting us to do in the classroom as well as teachers, right? We're expected to differentiate, but are we really giving teachers an opportunity to have differentiated professional development? And very rarely I've seen that happen. So it's a big thing.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that's something that we're trying to look at for next year. We don't know if we're going to be funded again next year. You know, it's the same story every single year. But I'm looking to see if I can start creating like mentee partnerships with the idea that you would work with each other to build your professional plan, and just meet periodically to kind of hold each other accountable on that plan.
Yeah. And I agree, Andy, what you said too. I also consider myself a lifelong learner as well. So I think that's important, that if we want teachers to be lifelong learners, that they feel supported by their school districts and things like the Catskill Regional Teacher Centers. We're really using them as a resource. Awesome. Christy, did you have a quote that you want to share? Can you let us know what the page number? Oh, we don't have the book. Okay. Was there something that do you remember the quote or what page number? Probably not off your top of your head, do you?
I don't think she's gotten the book yet at all.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right, so Aaron, did you want to read a quote that resonated with you? I feel like we have a small group. I guess we don't necessarily have to follow that protocol.
So I think on page 14, it says, a teacher who overestimates the value of telling and fails to provide chances for students to try on new thinking thwarts their ability to develop agency in their own learning, That teacher breeds dependency and signals to children that learning is a one-way proposition. I tell you and you listen. This sets up learning as a passive experience rather than one that requires action and effort.
Yeah, I have 3 stars on that. But
yeah, beautiful. And you know, everything really comes down to, I use the word fidelity, right? Like, we can mandate and we can ask for all these different things, but if you don't have your heart in it, it doesn't matter. You can go jump through the hoops, but it really is about the heart and soul behind it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I completely agree. And I think as we're thinking about all those mandated things that we were just talking about for PD and just overall mandated things that we're just adding to the teacher's plate, is that spark that often was there, is it starting to diminish within teachers? And I know I've seen it over the past couple of years, unfortunately, and it's sometimes we just got to get out of the way, I feel like, of teachers and let them do their job. They know what's best for kids for the most part. I've never seen a teacher get up in the morning and say, you know what, I hope I do the worst job possible today. I just hope I just, mess up these kids. So I think we have to give them more credit for sure.
Christy is so right. Christy has a great comment in the chat.
I think students need to have a Yeah, that's true. And especially you're at the high school level too, right? So that's, you have a whole nother level of expectation put on you. Even though 3A testing is important, I think the high school teachers definitely feel that because that's graduation, that there's a higher stake for sure.
Yeah, I teach the visual communications program at ONC BOCES. And so everything that I do centers around creativity. So, you know, it's really hard to standardize that kind of a thing, even though we still have to teach to certification exams, and those have to be standardized tests. So it can be a little bit frustrating, but what I really try to focus on is that students can still have so much creativity through the structure of what I teach. And that's what I try to focus on more than anything else. I try to give them tools to organize concepts, but then they're able to express themselves through those tools the way that they want to. So I really like what you said, Christy, as well, as that I think we kind of forget that that part of connection with learning, you know, that enjoyment, that excitement is so important. And it's not all just rote memorization.
Yeah, that's huge, right? How are we keeping those kids engaged and not just memorizing? But it is hard, especially because in all fields, basically, right, there usually is some type of certification. There is some type of standardized test that they're going to probably, our students are going to face at some point. But how do we find that balance between preparing them for the test and then preparing them for more creative pursuits?
Right.
Yeah. Good point. What non-Regents courses do you teach, Christy?
Oh my God, astronomy. Oh, that's amazing.
That is cool. That sounds like fun. I can see where the non-Regents might be a little more enticing. All right, so I lost my quote. I can read mine, which was, mine is on page 8, and it's at the bottom of the first paragraph. It's what's essential for independent learning tasks is that it clearly relates to the instruction each student has received, yet also provided the student an opportunity to apply the resulting knowledge in a new way. So, and one of the things we'll get into, I think, later in the book, but I love that because I think sometimes in the learning cycle that we as teachers give independent work too quickly. We expect mastery. Okay, well, I taught it, but they're not getting it, right? So I think here it's important that not only are students maybe practicing skills after you teach something, but higher level when they're ready. Like if we do it too soon, there becomes frustration on all parts, right? So when do we give that independent learning?
Yeah, when I was first reading through the chapter, I was trying to identify different ways in which different teaching, you know, strategies, instructional strategies, like where I use them. And so much of CTE is focused on learn by doing, right? All of that hands-on, that's really the core of what we do. And so I find that quite often, you know, what I'll do is I'll model, right? I'll be like, here's a program that you're going to be using. These are the tools that you need to use, and I'll walk the students through it. and of course I lecture, I'll give
course.
informational lessons as well. But so much of what we do is project-based learning. And so a lot of what I do is kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire kind of a thing, where I'm like, all right, here we go, we're gonna do it. But it's never in a way where they don't have access to me. And I think that's important too. Anytime that you give a student a task to do, letting them know, making them aware that you're there, whether that's you going around the room and checking in with them periodically, or just saying, if you have a question, raise your hand, I'm here for you. Monitoring, I think, is so essential. That formative assessment, I think, is really important in learning.
So I often learn best by being contrarian, and so forgive me if I say things that upset people. I kind of think this really has a lot to do with the expectations. I find sometimes it's great when you give just the minimal instructions and to see what the kids come up with, and if it's a creative task. But if it's something that really needs to have a specific outcome, then clearly you need to make sure that they understand the directions and that they have their procedural steps down. So I really think it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
Oh, so much of what I teach is graphic design. And so I am responsible for teaching the students how to use specific programs, Adobe programs, to do the work. And so, they can kind of be these big behemoths. And the students can be very intimidated by them. And so much of what I teach really is procedural, but once you get that procedure down, you can have so much creative license over what it is that you do in the programs. So fluency within those programs is so much of what I'm trying to work with my students.
I find it's technology, especially, like there's so many different ways about going about doing things. So I probably am not the greatest classroom teacher, but like I found it great when the kids came up with an alternative way to get to what I was trying to get them to do.
Yeah, and I try to show different pathways too, but I try to empower my students, especially as they become more fluent, to not be afraid to experiment, to not necessarily feel like they have to do it the way that I taught them, but that they can develop their own way of using the programs that suits them, because give 5 artists the same tools and they're all going to use them in different ways. Training can only take you so far. You really have to bring that, gumption as a creative to your process. And so I want to try and empower my students in that way as well.
And I think it's a beautiful thing about CTE is that teachers and students, right, they get that immediate application. So sometimes they already know their why. They know why they're using the Adobe or whatever it is programming you're using, because it's relevant to them. I think that's something I wish would come into other classrooms more often is, why am I learning this information? Yes. Like, why should I care about it? I think we as teachers need to make sure we're letting them know, like students, because I think that's a luxury that the CTE teachers have. Like, how cool is that they get that immediate application of whatever it is that they're learning.
I wonder how much of that is intentionality. Like, could we do that in other areas? Like, I was saying this to a science group yesterday. I took a science program from NYSET over the summer one time, And they basically were saying every single unit that they introduce, they have a local business introduce it. And so they will say, we're now going to be talking to you about whatever it is. And here's how we use it in our company. And our company does this, right? And then they walk away. Like they're not there to teach the lesson, but they're there to introduce it and say how it relates. It was very powerful. I wish we would do that with like everything.
Yeah, and once we get into a little bit more into chapter 2, Fisher and Fry really hit on the idea of why making it relevant. What is a learning objective, target, whatever, but why should you even care about this learning target? Like, what is the relevance? And that's one of the things. I love that they have a business. Wow, how that's so cool. And what was the class again? Can you?
It was a science STEM program during the summer, but this is one of those things, Jennifer, that like I can't get teachers to come out, but I every year I would have Christian Harris from the Bureau of Labor come and say, these are the occupational trends in your area. And he would list them out like Norwich, the #1 business in Norwich is banking. Like who would have ever known? Like
Really interesting.
Yeah. So I would love to reinstitute that kind of stuff. I just need to make sure that we get people coming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Awesome. Is there any other quote or anything about the chapter that as you introduced? I did want to just kind of talk about, or maybe your feelings about the idea that this is a framework. This isn't something to add to your plate. This is a framework to embed the things that you're already doing, but in a more purposeful way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I really appreciate that personally. And that's one of the reasons that I came to it was that I knew that it was something that I wanted to use to adapt what I already have, and be able to, make my class more efficient, just so that my students are getting the most out of it that they can. And so that's what drew me to this PD session for sure.
Yeah, awesome. And then what I also love, like another point about this framework too, is that depending on your field, you can do it in any order, right? If you're teaching that science lesson, you may start out with an inquiry where you're not modeling or teaching or doing anything, right? The students are doing all that work. Depends on what level of inquiry you're doing. But then you might flip it and you might be doing the focus instruction all the way at the end. So it's kind of an interesting and I think relevant to depending on what the outcome is that you want students to do. That at any point, these can be interchanged.
Also within the chapter, I really appreciated the section that talked about motivation, student motivation. Well, individual motivation, really. It can apply to anybody, but it's specifically through the student's eyes for this. And how they broke it down into identity, agency, and self-regulation. I thought that was really fascinating. I always have really loved psychology, and so it really played into, developmental and psychological and societal learning and influence. And then, of course, with the teachers as well, like what are the things that can allow teacher credibility to really come through. And then one of the last things came towards the end. There was a term called sponge lessons, which is to help extend lessons when maybe they might be a little bit short. And I have literally, over the course of like the past couple of years, I keep making notes about you need to make little extra activities or something for students who finish ahead of time, because, it sucks. Like, they appreciate having maybe, extra time to just kind of relax, but obviously we want to keep them on task as much as possible. So now that I have the terminology for it, I'll call it a sponge lesson.
That's awesome. I love that.
I missed that. Where was that sponge lesson part?
So let me see if I can pull that up. It's on page 18. It's
I
in
think I
the-
remember it at the end.
Oh yeah, there we go. Sponge activities.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I like that because I think I have noticed, like, especially with my junior class this year, they have begun to wrap up class earlier and earlier. And so often I'll remind them, I'll say, guys, we have like 15 minutes before you even have to pack up. But once they've decided that they've gotten everything that they need out of the lesson for the day, it's very hard to convince them to stay in it. And so having kind of like these little sponge activities, I think would be really helpful in instances like that, where, a student kind of feels like, well, I'm done learning for the day, so I'm just gonna check out.
Yeah, because learning is a process, right? It's not an end goal. And that's what we seem to be teaching kids is like, you need to get to this end.
Right.
But no, it's a whole process and fluidity. And we want them to be challenged deeper and longer, and not because anything for us, but that's what learning is.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes back to that, like, one quote around the idea that it's not like whatever I say and then you answer. Like, what was that? I can't remember the exact, but it was around that idea.
I tell you, you listen.
Yeah, that idea is not. And I think what I love about this framework too is that it builds in collaborative learning, which we all know, even as we're doing right now, right? We're getting together, and I could have read this book, but then if I'm not talking about it with somebody, my understanding is not as deep, right? So now, even though I've done this, I've done professional development on this before, even just having these conversations with this group, I'm learning more about things to think of a little differently. So I think that's really important that we don't forget that collaborative piece, even if it's just a quick think, pair, share, something in our lesson. Where are we taking this from short-term memory and putting it into that long-term memory by having those conversations and making it meaningful?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, so this was just a brief, I mean, this first chapter is just kind of the brief introduction, which is just kind of wrap our heads around this idea of this framework. I also, what I liked about this, and these I feel like are some updates, because this is a third edition and I've read the first and second one. And so what I liked about it is that it did the teacher action, student action. So like, what should students be doing this during this time, and what should the teacher, like students doing and teacher doing. So that's kind of a nice little addition. So you can kind of visually think about what is this section.
Yeah, that reminds me. Oh, sorry, Jen.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that very much reminds me of we changed our APPR this year at BOCES. We're doing Danielson now for student or for teacher assessments. And so one of the things that we did, knowing that, we'd be changing it from NYSET, we made like a spreadsheet that gave examples of, ineffective, like just starting to apply these things, effective and then highly effective, right? We tried to create specific examples that teachers could recognize in each classroom, whether they were teaching an elementary trust class, a middle school level trust class, alternative education science, whatever it was, they felt like they could understand how these standards could be seen in their classrooms. So I think that's super important, is being able to give concrete examples that helps people understand them better as well.
That's a really great point, especially teacher evaluations. This framework, it is very hard to do poorly on your teacher assessment if you're using this framework, because it really does have all of those great pieces within the teacher rubrics, Danielson, or whatever rubric you're using. Good instruction is good instruction. They all kind of maybe word it a little differently, but they all have the same pieces. And the gradual release are most of those pieces, if not all. It's very hard not to do well if you're using this model, and which is nice.
Right.
So it's also positive benefit. So it's a really good point. Anything else that stood out? Or I did love this quote, learning isn't strictly an intellectual enterprise.
Mm.
I think as an RTI perspective, I mean, for me, I probably spend 20 minutes of the 40 minutes just building relationships, because these kids got to care or know that I care before they even are going to settle down. And they come in and they just spew all these things, not necessarily everything that I want to hear, but then or others should hear as well. But what it does is then I can flip that switch very quickly and say, all right, let's get focused. Is there anything you need to say? All right, you have 5 minutes, say whatever it is. All right. And then they're more apt to work for me and be motivated, which is nice.
Mm.
Anything else about this chapter that for the greater good that we want to point out?
One note that I made was in just reading through the chapter, especially in the parts where it talked about motivation, etc. There were different students that popped into my head that I work with, right? Who, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I can think about it from that perspective, like seeing how the student behaves or whatever it might be. And I think the more that you can do to try and understand your students' perspectives, the better teacher you will be able to be to them. And it will only deepen the process of learning. And I think that's really important.
You're right. Yeah, no, I could not agree more that it's so important. I think sometimes, and sometimes I have to slow myself down. I'm guilty of this as well, or I've been guilty of it, where I'm just so focused on the outcome. Like, no, I need you to fill in gaps. I need you to do this. I need you to, be ready for that test or whatever it is. That sometimes it does have to go in the back burner if I'm going to I have to slow down, build those relationships to go faster, essentially, because I'm going to get more done with that. So sometimes I have to remind myself of that for sure. There was one thing around the body language, which I am sometimes very guilty of wearing my feelings on my face. So that is one thing that I do. Of course, working with the older elementary, the 4 or 5, they can sometimes, they kind of enjoy the sarcasm, funny thing, but then sometimes they don't know when to take me seriously sometimes because they don't know if I'm serious or we're just being sarcastic. So being mindful of my own body and how I'm doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I have a poker face. I try really hard. But it can be an advantage and an extreme disadvantage, just depending. Yeah. I think that when students can see an authentic reaction from you, I think they can see you as a person, and it takes there isn't as much of that wall of like, this is a teacher who I cannot be personable with, anything like that. But at the same time, you have to be very careful about what you do, even if it's unintentional, what kind of tone that sets. So it really is important to be cognizant of that for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Erin, do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so I just think if you want to take a second to either write, type it in the chat, something. What did you learn today that you want to implement in your classroom? Why do you feel that it's important? So what is it that about our conversation that you're hoping to think about and implement, and why is that important? I'll write it on my notebook. Hmm. All right. So yeah, ladies, really great points. Yeah, to integrate more of the PD. Yeah. So sometimes we have all these best of intentions with the PD that we're doing, but how do I actually go and implement it? And then, yeah, sharing it with people that can know and understand. And then collaborative work, awesome. Yeah, that's a huge piece. And don't be afraid of that. Once we get to that chapter, it is kind of interesting around collaborative work is how do I make collaborative work that isn't one kid doing everything and then everyone taking credit for it? How do I input individual accountability within the collaborative piece? I just want to, this kind of made me remember again to be more relevant and to my students, making sure I'm telling them why the information that they matter, like why do they need to learn these things? And I think that'll help, goes along with that motivational piece of this chapter. Like, how do I motivate them? And I think that's one way I can be more intentional about the relevant work that they're doing. Aaron, did you want to share?
I don't think I had much to add. I just really was reflecting on Andy's comment of the sponge lessons, and it just goes to show how important it is to discuss this stuff, because I was kind of going through like checking off, oh, I read that, so I can add to the discussion or whatever, but really didn't pay attention to some details and things that were pulled out.
Yeah, which is great. So going into next week, thinking about like that, maybe being more intentional with the reading of like, why does this matter, or where am I going? I like that. Can you go to the next slide? So next week when we meet, this book is perfectly 6 chapters and we're meeting for 6 weeks. So I know I put the thing in there, the schedule in the our folder, but it really is just going to be a chapter a week. For next time, I want you to write down 3 questions that you have as you're reading. So as you're reading it, what is it that questions did it make you ask? It can be maybe there's words you don't know. Maybe it's, oh, I wonder if so-and-so, a student, maybe it made you ask a question about a student. Maybe the student will thrive if I do this. And then if there's time, so hopefully maybe this weekend you can read that chapter. It's pretty easy paced. And then maybe next week, think about planning and implementing all the components of focus instruction into one lesson. See if you can fit as many pieces into a lesson, and then maybe bring back that to share next week.
Ooh, cool.
And Erin, this is very relevant to professional development. When I would plan my own professional development, I would always have the learning target. I would have these pieces in it. So maybe I don't know if you're doing any PD this week, but maybe thinking about that as well, that focus instruction.
Thank you. Yes.
And Christy, this might be a book too that might be on some of your teacher library websites too for teachers that you can check out. So like, I don't know if it's on, what is it, Sora or something. They have them within the BOCES districts through the library systems. So just a food for thought. All right, any other parting? I feel like we've kind of, this section doesn't get too heavy, but thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you taking your time. I know you're all busy.
Yes, thank you so much to Aaron and to you, Jen, for facilitating this and doing this PD. This is fantastic. And just know that your flyers are getting to us. We see them.
Yay.
So thank you again so much. And I'm really looking forward to the next session.
Yeah, and if you, I don't feel like it's too late if we want to add somebody, and then Aaron can get you those books. I think we had a total of 15, right, Aaron? So
Yes.
if there's somebody that you can think of, even in the school districts, we have some books too. And I feel like this was just the overview, so they could definitely, it's not too late to join.
Okay, well, I will put the word out for sure.
That's
thank
what we
you.
find the most successful. We can put out all the publicity we want to, but it really does come down to somebody saying, hey, I'm taking this great book study. You want to join me?
Yeah, word of mouth. It is
Yep.
incredibly important.
And a personal recommendation. Yeah. And Andy, I don't know if you know any other students, but my son is over there at BOCES. He's doing the Megatronics program.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'll keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, so his name is Tyler.
Wonderful.
It sort of looks like me.
I can see his face in my head. I'm working on a yearbook right now, so I've certainly labeled his picture before.
There we go.
All right, great. All right, have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Night. Thank you,
Bye.
Jen.
Thank you.
Bye. Erin, is there anything you need from me?
No,
Is there anything else you need from me, Erin? Okay.
I don't think
Okay,
so.
awesome.
Yeah, throw it in the slides into the shared drive, and we're all set for annual meeting, right?
Yes, for the May 2nd. Yes, I just met with Gina today. We're
Awesome.
to do, yeah, so we have some plans. So we'll be good. We're moving and grooving.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So
All right,
great.
thanks, Erin.
All right, thank you. All right, bye-bye.
All right.